Hi there, it's Christy with the Chirp YouTube channel. Today I'm here to talk to you about another developmental key, another thing that is very important for kids to learn and for you to help kids learn if there are kids in your life who are developing or who may have developmental disabilities or delays that you want to help them overcome or learn in spite of. This developmental key is self-regulation. This is honestly the most fundamental of developmental skills because if we can't keep ourselves calm and regulated, we can't function in the world and we can't learn from the world or from anything taking place around us because we're dysregulated. Let's talk about self-regulation. What is self-regulation? Self-regulation is the ability to stay calm in very challenging circumstances. Self-regulation is not the same thing as self-control. Self-control is realizing that you need to do certain things in order to reach a goal. If I want to have friends, I know that I need to keep my mouth shut on certain topics that may be offensive to those friends. There are certain things that I'm not going to say, like, your butt looks big in those pants. I'm not going to say that to a person with whom I want to make friends. Kids have to learn self-control as well. But you can't learn self-control until you have self-regulation, because self-regulation is what allows you to be calm enough so that your brain can work logically. Self-regulation requires that I recognize my own emotions and that I know what to do with them so that I don't reach the point of red alert or meltdown so that I can continue to function in the world. What might cause kids to become dysregulated? Let me list some things for you. Sensory disorders, social emotional difficulties that have not been addressed quite yet, which means kids have not been taught how to deal with their emotions. And believe it or not, that is not a natural skill. I myself had very, very poor social emotional skills when I was a young child. And I had a thing happen to me in school. I skipped an entire grade and I went from half-day kindergarten to full-day second grade. And it was a really difficult transition for me. And I'm not sorry that that happened. I never felt like an outcast after second grade was over, but that was a really hard year. And I wasn't trained. It wasn't really done at the time to teach kids how to deal with their emotions. It was just kind of expected, especially in Minnesota, where at the time so many people were of German or Scandinavian backgrounds, and when you had a feeling, you just dealt with it, or you just ignored it. You didn't talk about it very much, you didn't need to process it, you didn't need to do something healthy with it, you could just sit on it and it would eventually go away. Guess what? Feelings don't usually do that. They usually fester, and my feelings festered. And I was in the nurse's office a lot with upset stomachs and headaches, and I cried an awful lot as well, which was very hard for my poor parents, especially my mom, who had to put me on that bus and send me to school when I was crying. So, please, let's teach kids how to manage their emotions, and I will talk more about that in a few minutes. Physical pain or oversensitivity can also lead to dysregulation. If I have something that's hurting and I can't tell you about it, I am probably going to have trouble staying calm. A child who has attention difficulties or impulsivity, either as just part of her character or as part of a diagnosis, is going to have more difficulty staying calm and regulated as well, because internally more activity is required and more training is required for that child to stay calm. Also, a child who's fatigued or tired is going to have a lot more trouble staying calm. Once again, I myself have trouble staying calm and reasonable when I'm very tired. How can you recognize dysregulation? Let's talk about that. Crying, meltdowns, tantrums, aggression, trying to escape from the situation, trying to hide from people, screaming, getting really tense, getting really stiff, or getting extra floppy. All of those things can be signs that a child is no longer calm and instead is becoming dysregulated. I have a lot of videos on self-regulation because self-regulation is the foundation. We can't build upon it with other skills until we have a nice solid foundation. It just makes sense. You can't learn other things until you're calm enough to learn those other things. Because I already have a lot of videos on this topic, I'm going to put a link right up there to the playlist that I have created about self-regulation, so that if this is an issue for your child, you can kind of just watch through that playlist and pick out the things that you think will be most helpful for you, for your child, for your family, or for your classroom if you are an educator. I also want to talk in this video a little bit about how we can support self-regulation in younger kids and then in slightly older kids. If we're talking about babies, we want to make sure that we pay attention to the baby's response. So if I come at a baby, I'm really excited to smooch on my baby, and my baby turns away and is offended, I might not know she's offended, I may just think she doesn't like me. But guess what? Your baby likes you. However, her sensory system may be a little on the sensitive side, in which case we need to approach her and interact with her in a calmer and gentler way. Our touch needs to be gentler, our voices need to be softer, our faces need to move around a little bit less. Some kids are so sensitive that all of those things early on, right in their face, can be too much, and they can withdraw from human interaction. We don't want that, because when kids withdraw from human interaction, just like I discussed in my last video, which was about engagement, kids need to be engaged in the world. Everyone needs to be engaged in the world. Otherwise, we're not able to learn from it. So, what if your child doesn't seem to respond when you approach him at all? In this case, we need to be more exciting. We need to use more variability in our vocal pitch. We need to use bigger facial expressions and hand expressions. We need to wear hats. We need to have a boa. We need to do all sorts of exciting things so that this baby is engaged in the world, is interested in what's happening around him. Maybe he needs more surprises. Maybe he needs more noises. Maybe he needs more people. Whatever it is, we need to make sure that these kids are engaged, and that as they're engaged, they're able to stay regulated. Here are some questions that you should ask yourself as you're working with younger kids on the issue of self-regulation. What type of sound pulls my child in? What type of sound pushes my child away? Is my child pulled in by quieter, calmer noises and pushed away by loud racket? Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe your child really doesn't even pay attention to you if you use a quiet voice, but if you use a really loud, excited voice, your child tunes right into you. Pay attention to that and use yourself and your body and your voice in a way that's going to be the most appealing to your child. Ask yourself the same question about touch and about sound and about smell. Think about all the senses that could potentially either repel or attract your child, and use them appropriately. So if your child really can't stand the smell of your fabric softener and you figure this out, then change fabric softeners. Don't offend your child in pursuit of a more fragrant sheet. Instead, use something with no smell, and then maybe your child won't be so offended. The bottom line for younger kids is teach yourself how to recognize your child's sensory signals and how to respond to them in ways that are going to attract your child rather than repel your child. And teach other people how to do that with your child as well, so that more people in your child's environment become friendly rather than kind of offensive to her system. Once again, I want to mention that if your child is not responding to interaction, or if your child is really seriously avoiding interaction, please get him or her checked out by either a developmental pediatrician or some kind of a speech-language pathologist who does baby stuff. There could be an issue with hearing. There could be an issue with vision. There could be some sort of other developmental issue that just isn't very easily observable to a parent who isn't a specialist in that area. So make sure that you pay attention to your child's responses. And if you think there might be an issue, get it checked out, because it will only help. It helps when we get the appropriate support for a child. The child isn't just going to magically learn all those skills. We have to teach them. And that's why I always recommend that you get intervention as early as you possibly can. It's really important so that the child doesn't miss the opportunity to learn even more skills. We're going to talk a little bit about supporting self-regulation in older kids now. And the main point that you should take away from this is talk about emotions a lot. A lot. We just keep talking about emotions because emotions are happening a lot, and little kids don't even necessarily realize when they're having an emotion. Like me, I thought I was having a stomach ache. It wasn't a stomach ache. Well, it was a stomach ache, but it wasn't a problem with my digestive system. It was a problem with me being anxious and feeling unable to succeed in a new situation where I didn't have anyone helping me. And I was just expected to function like everyone else, even though I hadn't learned how to do that yet. I thought I had a headache, but it was not a problem in my brain or in my blood vessels that caused my head to hurt. It was me feeling very tense and not having healthy ways to deal with it. I really wish that I could go back in time and I could talk to that little girl and help her to express her feelings, to recognize her feelings first of all, and then to express and deal with them in healthy ways. One of the ways we help little kids understand feelings is by recognizing what happens to them physically when they're having a certain emotion. If your child starts to get a wrinkled forehead and starts to do a frowny mouth, I could look at her and say, wow, your forehead is a little wrinkled and your mouth is looking a little frowny. It looks like you might be feeling a little worried. Do you feel worried right now? Worried is a great word to use. I don't usually use the word anxious because most people see anxious as some sort of a diagnosis because we have generalized anxiety disorder now that is a recognized psychological diagnosis. With kids, I want them to recognize their emotions. If a child says, I feel anxious to an adult, I don't want the other adult to get the idea that this child has some sort of a diagnosis that needs to be dealt with. I just want the child to be able to express herself. She feels worried, and that's okay. We all feel worried sometimes. There are things in life that are worrisome, and we can share our feelings with other people. Sometimes they can even help. In fact, even just listening is a huge help. Me expressing my feelings when they're bad makes them less, and when they're good, it makes them increase. It makes them even better. I don't know who said this quote, but the quote is something along the lines of, a joy shared is a joy doubled. A grief shared is a grief halved, as in split in half. And I think that's very true. We want to teach our kids how to do that. Okay, so that was the worried one. If my child is very tense and gets a clamped jaw and gets a furrow, but an angry furrow, we can say, it looks like you might be feeling frustrated. Look at your arms. They're very straight and tense. And look, your eyes are all squinty and your jaw is clamped shut. That looks like you feel frustrated. That's what your body does when you feel frustrated. Let's think of some good ways that we can cope with feeling frustrated. And then you can brainstorm a little bit. When I'm frustrated, I tend to talk to a friend. Sometimes I talk to God about it. Sometimes I need to go for a walk. Sometimes jumping on the trampoline can help some kids. So you can talk about ways that you can deal with the emotions that you see reflected in the child's body. This will help because the child can start to recognize her own emotions from what her body is doing, and then she can brainstorm her own solutions as time goes on. And that becomes a very healthy coping mechanism when the child has emotions, because we all have emotions and I'm still learning how to deal appropriately with the emotions that I have. Think about how great it would have been for you if someone had taught you these things early on when you were 3 or when you were 4 or 5. Even in any point in elementary school, these skills should be paramount, because you can't have a successful life if you can't manage your emotions properly and appropriately and in a healthy way. Questions you want to ask yourself as you support older kids who have difficulty with self-regulation are a little bit different from the questions you might ask with a younger kid. With an older child, you want to ask, which situations are the most dysregulating for my child? Is it when she goes to soccer practice because she's kind of clumsy? Is it when we eat because there are certain kind of foods that she's still getting used to? And which strategies can I teach in advance that are going to ease those situations a bit? You want to ask yourself, what are some signs that my child is getting dysregulated? High-pitched voice, tears in the eyes, making a little whining noise, getting really stiff arms, whatever it is. Train yourself to pay attention to that, and then to teach your child to recognize those same symptoms in herself. And then you want to ask yourself, what is the best way for my child to work it out? If it's frustration or sadness or anger, there will probably be a few different strategies that you use, but a lot of times the same 3 or 4 strategies work really well for any emotion that the child views as a challenging emotion. So it might be having swing, taking a walk, sitting down and having a glass of water. Sometimes cold packs help. Kids are used to cold packs healing the world, and so cold packs sometimes on the back of the neck or on the back of the knees or on the throat sometimes can help a kid calm down. If your child is having difficulty with self-regulation, it's a great idea, and in fact for every parent this is a great idea, get on the floor and play with your child in the way that is most appealing to your child, 20 to 30 minutes, as many times a day as you possibly can. I would say 5 times. I know there are other things in your life that are important, but your child's development really does depend on the kind of interaction that she gets or that he gets. It's very important that people interact with kids in ways that are appealing to the kids. So it's not just sitting on the floor scrolling on your phone while your kid plays with a train around you. It's actually looking in your child's eyes, interacting with your child, playing along with your child. I have lots of videos too on play and on how to do that with kids, so check those out right up there. There you have some ideas for helping kids manage self-regulation better. I have a bunch of resources in the information box below this video. Please don't miss out on those. You can also go to my website where you can see the resources in a little bit more detail and why I like them so much. And of course, don't miss my other videos on the topic of self-regulation, because they'll give you a lot more insight into this issue as a whole. Because each video I kind of come at the issue in a slightly different way, and so all the information puts together a nice big ball of knowledge for you. I hope that you have a wonderful day. Go out and enjoy the sunshine, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!